From the sound of it, you know what it is. You know what time it is. It is the SHOPO Hour. It is an hour of conversation, questions, answers from the perspective of SHOPO, which is the union representing the rank and file men and women of HPD. And it is always a delight to start my seventh favorite day of the week with the gentleman in studio. Brother Nick has time away from the show. He's hard at work, of course, on duty. But Brother Mark Criccio and Brother Steve Keogh are in studio. Brother Steve, by the way, do you want me to talk to Mark first for about 12 minutes so you can catch your breath with that?
It's okay. I think I can manage. Good morning, Rick.
Good morning.
Always happy and grateful to be here with you and the listeners.
Listen, by the way, I'm up to speed on CPR, so if
Sure,
anything happens, I'll be more than happy to administer, even if you don't need it. So
I'm good. Thank you, brother. Appreciate you.
Always keeping a watch. Brother Mark, good morning.
Good morning, Rick. Happy Monday.
Yeah.
And unlike me, Steve needed his beauty rest today.
Well, it's working.
Yeah.
That's all that matters. Listen, we're brothers and we have a great time together. We also have the other side, which is taking care of business. And in this hour, your telephone calls at 521-8383. I'm going to put levity in a box, put it up on the shelf. And I spent the previous time on air and will again at 9 a.m. to focus and remember the events, the terroristic attacks of 9/11. I'd like to turn it over to you, gentlemen. Your thoughts, perspectives, experiences, where you were, when you learned, and over the years, where we are now, 22 years later. Brother Mark?
Well, for me, 22 years later still seems like yesterday. And it's just, I just hope people realize we can never forget this. We can never forget the sacrifices people made, whether it be first responders or regular civilians, just the way people pulled together that day. And, for me, it hits me pretty hard. Every year, it's like, I've been watching National Geographic the last 2 days, all 9/11 stuff, and all different stories I haven't seen before, right? But, when I lived in New York, I was down there. I know that place intimately. I know the streets. I would pass it weekly, and it was just like a regular part of the skyline, I got a couple cousins that they called it the pile, they worked down at the pile, thank God anybody I knew perished that day, but a lot of people that my cousins had worked with have died of cancer from working down there, and it's just, we just can't forget that. We just can't forget that place, and we just need to make sure every year we focus on what happened. Where was I? I got a call at 4:00 in the morning from my brother, John, right, who lives over there, and I had a trip planned 2 weeks later to go to New York, right?
Wow.
And he says, "You're not coming in 2 weeks." And I said, "What are you talking about?" He goes, "Turn on your TV." And as I turned on my TV, one of the towers fell.
Oh,
I'm like, yeah. But you know what? I went anyway. At the objections of a lot of my family and a lot of friends, like, no, because everybody was still reeling. They didn't know what was going on, and where all these sleeper cells were and all this. And I said, I'm going, and I went. I went for my plan. I went to a couple Broadway shows, and they were so appreciative. They came out to the audience and thanked us for coming because it was a ghost town. There was nobody was traveling, right? And people were being out of work, and I went down to 9/11. I met one of my cousins, we went through a couple checkpoints, but I saw the pile. It was still smoking 2 weeks later.
Still
2 weeks later, still smoking. Yeah. And then couldn't get all the way in because they had found a body that day, and they just shut it all down because it's an active crime scene, right?
Yeah.
But eerie, so eerie down there, But yeah.
The interesting thing is the portrayal in film, video, is that these are massive towers, and but when you get up close, fairly small parcel of land for all the towers, and when the two towers, not to diminish it, but they're so slender in perspective because of their height. You don't really, I at least when I first visited 100 years ago, I was like, not smaller than I thought, but it just seemed more compact.
The footprint.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The footprint, but those towers are massive. It was amazing.
Yeah.
And one of my friends, her father helped build those. So I remember I talked to her a couple weeks later, and she's like, "Yeah, my dad called me. They knocked my building down, because they took pride in,
Sure.
in building that thing, So it's like
Amazing.
sad.
Amazing. Brother Steve?
Yeah. So, Rick, I remember exactly where I was at. I was living in Chicago in a neighborhood called Humboldt Boulevard. I had just gotten up. I was getting ready for work like any other day. I turned the TV on, and it was on every channel. And I remember seeing one of the towers on fire. And I knew it was New York because that's where my dad is from. Mm-hmm. And my dad's family, my dad's brother, all his families were there. We went there every summer when I was a kid. So I knew exactly what I was looking at. But I don't think I processed what I was looking at. So I was getting all of that from the news. Then I watched kind of like in a daze, in a trance almost. And then the other plane hit the second tower, right? So you have all that. First thing I remember I did, I called my dad. He was trying to get information the same way I was. I wasn't in the first responder community back then in 01. And I'll look at this in two ways. Maybe you and some of your listeners can relate to this, but I remember seeing the images of the people making a decision of whether or not they wanted to either burn to death or jump to their death. Right? Mm-hmm. You saw the images of the people making that unbelievable decision. Do I die of smoke inhalation and burns, or do I jump? And I remember those images. Then I remember the powerful images of where you had all the employees that commuted from New Jersey and the other boroughs to get downtown, to get to the trade center, and you saw all the empty cars in the parking lot. And I get some chicken skin as I talk about this because, again, I wasn't a first. This is just on the civilian side, what really stood out to me. Then you think to yourself, and I'm not even talking about the airplane, the flight that crashed into the Pentagon and was. I'm not even talking about the airplane stuff. Can you imagine what those people must have felt when they realized at those high floors that they were trapped? Can you just imagine? As a human being, I can't even imagine the terror and what you're going through when you really have an understanding that you are going to die. And I can't even imagine. I don't mean to be too dramatic. It's just, you're asking me what stood out to me. And I thought to myself, as a human being, how do you handle that? The people that made calls to the loved ones. The third thing was, the tapes that were played.
I remember.
Of people leaving goodbye messages to their loved ones. That is just gut-wrenching. Now I switch gears to first responder. Could you imagine the courage and the bravery of NYPD fire, police, the port police, knowing that they are absolutely putting themselves in harm's way, of going into the tower, and when it's on fire, mind you, think about this now. The building is already on fire at the high floors, and you have firemen going into those buildings trying to rescue the people on the floors above where the fire is at. You can't tell me these brave individuals didn't understand that there was a possibility that they might not come back from this. But what they said to themselves, they made a gut check. They said, we need to rescue these people, and we're going to die trying, right? Because then that first tower fell, then the second tower fell. And just the immense bravery of the first responder community going into a situation like that, where there is a high probability that you're going to get injured or even killed. And how many hundreds, Mark, of fire firefighters passed, and then the port police.
Yeah.
I mean, and then, of course, you have the civilian casualty. It just, but coming full circle, it reminds me of in times like that, how our country seems to come together for the better. And then I have images of the first responders from all over the country going to ground zero, people helping out. It seems like one thing that makes our country amazing is that when you have this type of tragedy, this kind of loss of life, it almost seemed like we had a surge in patriotism, a surge in support for the first responder community, and just really came together, whether that was to promote healing. And I remember being really proud when all that was done to really be an American, even though it was such a horrific thing. When I saw Ground Zero being rebuilt, when I saw the first responders working there, again, risking their lives. How many of the cops and the fire guys that were on that pile with all that smoldering rubble all now have all these ailments. They have all these different kind of cancers and whatnot. And I remember that. I have family there. I didn't know anybody personally that was lost in 9/11. But to Mark's point and your point, we really can't forget that for several reasons. And I have to remind myself at the age I'm at in my life, there are young people walking around that never experienced that, right? You got someone that's 18, 19 years old. They might not know what we're talking about. And I don't think we're doing it in bigger picture. I don't know if we do the best job at teaching history, but I think this is one of those things that we should should not forget and give the backstory, especially with the brave men and women in the first responders community that responded to that terroristic attack.
Steve, you brought up a really good point, because I was reading an article the other day. To me, it should be in the curriculum of all the schools. And there were some school districts on the mainland that actually took it out of their curriculum, which is BS. To me, it should be in every single curriculum throughout this country.
Was there some rationale?
I don't know.
I'm just saying, because it's just...
we get into that woke crap, and we don't want to get there.
And I understand, and I even addressed that in the previous segment, that the division amongst us is the most profound. It's heightened, it's most vocal, it's pervasive, and it's damaging. I mean, there is intent now. It's not just, this is my opinion, you got to live with it. This is my opinion. If you don't buy into it, then there's a consequence to you. And that's one of the most egregious parts of all of this. And just briefly, you mentioned the age. Zachary was just born. He was born in 2001. 4 a.m, early morning, we received a call, and we lived in a high-rise at the time. Received a call from Angie, who was still serving as Miss America. And she was calling from the L.A. airport. And she just simply said, "Turn your TV on, we're at war." And we turned the TV on, and sure enough, treated to exactly what you have described. I immediately had to leave. Berna and Zach came right here into the studio, and we began coverage that lasted almost an entire 24 hours. And the reason why, just wanted to commiserate so folks could have a place to share and talk about never forget. That's it. Now, very briefly, the kids have always been aware. Each 9/11, I would treat them to whether it's a documentary, whether it's whatever it is, and we would sit and we would discuss 9/11 at the earliest of ages. And to this day, now both kids are gone. But my messages to them are, don't forget. And if we don't nurture our next generation, we're never going to remember. It will dissipate and it will go away. And that is of utmost disrespect to all the people that lost their lives, the first responders and more, You eloquently shared what their perspective was, the people who perished on the top of that building. And one of the most disquieting, troubling, and people leaping from that building. I can't even imagine what's going through the mind of somebody that chooses to jump. It doesn't compute with me. So I want to thank you both for sharing. I want to thank you because I'm prayerful that that will be a perspective and perhaps maybe even a stimulation to revisit, remember, and pass on personal experiences that we may have had for ourselves, but to share with others, especially within the four walls of your home. Make sure your children understand 9/11. And there we go. I want to thank you again. Go ahead.
And if you're ever visiting New York, I don't know if you guys have been, but if you go to that museum, it's powerful.
It is. And we went right when Ground Zero was cleared and construction was just beginning. And took the kids there. And you're right, the museum off to the side, just not beautiful. It is. It's great homage. Really well. Great homage.
Yeah.
But the one that got me the most.
The names, Rick?
The names were.
The names,
yeah.
And walking down a side street, from the rebar was constructed a cross.
Mm.
That was it. And there were pictures of those who, that was it. I just would. But it's important that thank you, Mark, for reminding us.
And from what I understand, there's a separate wall down there now for people who have perished after 9/11 from 9/11 illnesses.
Now, we could do another about the government's treatment, and we'll get John Stewart on. He'll take up 3 hours of it. Anyway, gents, we're at 7:26 in the morning. Thank you so much. Thank you. We're at 7:26 in the morning. Let me navigate through this break. Once again, welcome back. It is the SHOPO Hour, 521-8383. We do have a bottom of the hour break taking place in just a moment. I'll fill you in on some of the day's top stories and a whole lot more, and we'll do that momentarily at 521-8383. Looks like a call, but let's do this. I want to check in with the gentleman. Nick is on duty today, but from last week to now, top of mind, what's transpired? What's top of mind with you, Brother Steve?
Sure, Rick. So just to share with your listeners here in Honolulu, our officers that work for patrol for Honolulu PD, they're a couple weeks in now to the alternative work schedule, where it's the three day week work schedule. So far, from a union standpoint, we've gotten really good feedback from the members. It seems to be going well, and we're happy that it's been successful so far.
Excellent. Yep. Good to hear.
Yeah.
Is this now department wide? I mean, department wide that qualifies.
Yep. So we have 8 patrol districts here with Honolulu PD, and all 8 patrol districts are now doing basically 2 watch systems. So 6 a.m. to 7:30 p.m. would be the day shift, and then the night shift would come in at 6 p.m. and work till 7:30 a.m. the next day.
Gotcha. Yep. It's good to hear, because I know we were chatting even before it was a reality, and
Yep. And then on Maui recently, we extended the pilot program for the officers on Maui to also be working work the 312. So that pilot program did get extended.
Gotcha. Thank you very much for that update. Yep. Thank you, Brother Mark.
So Friday, September 1st, I attended the service of the late Chief Lee Donahue. Right. So I just wanted to shout out, great man, great chief, well respected in the community. He served his community for many, many years, and even after he retired, he was on many board of directors and committees, and just never stopped serving the community. So I knew him pretty well. So just a shout out to, to a great man,
Amen. Officer Sapolu is his
Friday.
memorial coming up
It's going to be Friday.
this Friday.
From 9 to 12,
Okay.
Central Union Church.
Central Union. Great. Thanks so much.
And Rick, when it comes to Chief Donahue, you really know that you've left a legacy and that you've made an impact in the community when years after you've retired, you have current cops and cops that worked for this man still talking about him. A lot of times in the first responder community, it's kind of like if you see guys, you have that camaraderie, and then when people go their separate ways, they go their separate ways. But when you have retirees like Mark and others making it a point to go to the funeral service and still talk about this man that they worked for, it goes to show you Chief Donahue did it right. He did it right when he was chief. He earned the respect of the men and women that served underneath him. He gave back to the community in so many ways. This is a man that really left a powerful legacy. And for cops that are retired to come back and come to their service, it really is a powerful statement when you have cops talking about a guy that's been off the job for, let's say, 20 years already, and they're still talking about what a great cop he was and what a great man he was and what he did in the community. That's a real legacy that Chief Donahue left behind.
Amen. How do we learn more about the latest with SHOPO?
Sure. So, Rick, we encourage everybody to please come visit us at shopohawaii.org. From our website, you could find us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter.
We're going to rejoin the gentlemen in studio. Brother Steve, Brother Mark, Brother Nick has some time off. Always thinking about Brother Bobby as well. But in the meantime, your telephone calls coming up next. Stay with us. Once again, if you'd like to join us, 521-8383. However, before the break, we had mentioned that Officer Sapolu's memorial is upcoming. Brother Mark, great message.
Yeah, so it's going to be Friday at Central Union Church from 9 to 12, the services. But it's not only for law enforcement. If you're a member of the community, go to this service, show your respect. He gave his life for this community. So if you have time or if you can make it, please show up.
Well put indeed. And again, it is 7:38. Update on Maui. Any thoughts, comments, feedback from members, perhaps your own insight, reactions to the latest developments?
So over on Maui, Rick, you have Maui Nick still doing his thing over there for us. We were able to give some monetary relief to our members that needed some assistance. We currently have an ongoing kind of fundraiser campaign to help them out, and we're going to continue to navigate that and just realize that even in the midst of all this tragedy, our membership, the men and women on Maui PD, are still getting up every day, and they're still going to keep the community safe. On a personal note, I'm happy to hear that they are plugging the tourism again. I'm happy to hear that. I think that that community's not going to make it without the robust marketing that, hey, we're still open. Because I have, like I think I shared with you last week, I have friends and family on the mainland, and the way that this has been marketed is you would think that the entire county of Maui went up in flames. And people don't seem to realize that it was tragically one area, but that the rest of Maui is beautiful and it's open for people to explore. So I was just thinking about what the cops are doing over there, Rick, and then also that we're trying to get the tourism back. And the other thing, again, I don't want to ruffle any feathers here, I find it pretty rich that celebrities that are making millions and billions of dollars actually have the audacity to reach out to, let's say, the common folk and say that they should give out of their pocket. I don't mean to get on a tangent, but if you and people might know who I'm talking about. If you are making $100 million, $1 billion a year, and you get on a platform telling everybody else they should take money out of their pockets, I just find that a little rich. Just wanted to say that.
I find it extremely wealthy. That's how rich that is.
Yeah.
I understand. Brother Mark?
I echo what Steve is saying. You said what I was thinking.
Oh,
you know,
really?
it's
Okay.
like,
I didn't
so-
know. I was just like,
No,
come
it's
on.
like you say, all these millionaires like give money. Why don't you give money? You know, empty half of your bank account. You're not going to feel it. You know, but
You got 10% money. I went into First Hawaiian Bank, and they want HELOCs at 10%. I almost fell over. HELOCs are 10%.
Man.
oh yeah,
10% for a HELOC. Do
What
you all remember?
happened?
Do I remember when it was like 1.75 and 2%? How's this gain? It's 10%.
Yep.
Jeez.
Yep.
That's the real
That's
economic
10.
report.
HELOCs are 10%.
Man.
Yeah.
There's so much that's going on. I was in Saturday, and I took Governor Green's address and Q&A about the updates. And there was quite a bit that was inside those comments. But one that kind of stood out for me was the reopening scheduled for October 8th. And the other was utilizing the Attorney General's office for identifying and prosecuting predatory lenders and more. There is a fine line in legal definition of terms of what could be considered to be predatory, and I'm not certain exactly what that line is, where you cross over from cold calling to, preying on individuals. A lot of legalese is being thrown about, all the way from land use to congressional hearings, internal investigations, and the like. That connotes law enforcement to me. In these situations, would MPD or even HPD be called upon in any way with all the legal aspects of what's transpiring?
I mean, we could, depending on what the issue is, right? I mean, if someone feels they're wrong, of course we're gonna make a case for them and forward it, whether it be to Attorney General or the feds or something. But it depends. It depends on what it is.
So if somebody was approached,
See, here's
in a predatory fashion, and they believe that they're being exploited, does their first call go to MPD, HPD, or just looking at process protocol? Didn't mean to interrupt, but I want to make sure.
Rick, and I didn't mean to jump into it. Yeah. Somebody calling a homeowner up or a landowner and asking them if they want to sell their property, that's inherently not a crime. It's in terribly bad taste, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's really despicable. But is that a criminal act in and of itself? The answer is no.
Mm-hmm.
It's no. It's horrific, but it's not. If somebody, now I would say, well, how did they get the numbers and how do they do all of this? Now, again, it would have to fit into, but just at face value as I'm processing this, these predatory individuals calling up saying, hey, I'm so-and-so, I'd like to buy your property, I'd like to buy your land, I'd like to buy it. There's nothing criminal about that act, okay? So to answer your question, Rick, not really. If first hearing it, not really. But let's just remind everybody, too, that, and, they're a tight group knit over there in Lahaina. You don't make any decisions like that after you have that kind of tragedy. And that's, if I heard correctly, too, I want to say that the deputy director of HUD or somebody was stating that they were going to step in with this kind of thing. I'm sorry, I don't know more, but
there was a cautionary.
Is that
tale.
what it was? There was something, and they were going to follow up with that. But just at face values to your listener, if it basically is a sales cold call, right? Now, if we look at what harassment would be, you could tell that person, I'm not interested, don't call me again. And then if they kept calling at inopportune times, then maybe at best you'd have a harassment by phone case, which are pretty weak to begin with. But
so that helps a lot, because it appears that if someone is experiencing that, contacting the AG's office is kind of the directive. So bypassing first line of law enforcement, meaning there would have to be some sort of legal enforcement of a directive or emergency proclamation, something of that nature. Instead, statutory compliance. Okay. Yeah, that helps. Definitely. 521-8383, our telephone number, if you'd like to be a part of this program. I have a couple of other things. I don't know if I really want to bring them up now, to be honest with you. Yeah, I don't.
Okay.
I don't. It's in the tone and tenor of our conversation, and just want to. I'd like to get your take. I always check in about Waikiki. You're both so knowledgeable and understanding. And then I want to talk about D1 for a moment, if you don't mind. But start with Waikiki, recent press conference stating that there has been a reduction and that the tone is changing in Waikiki. I'd like to get your take.
So I saw that.
Okay.
And then what I've said numerous times on this show is if you enforce the law, the crime is going to go down. It's simple as that. You don't need no fancy names to say that, safe and sound, or whatever it is. Just enforce the laws. Simple. If the guy commits a crime, you put him in jail. Simple. Done. It's going to stop. But when you start, no, we're going to just let him go out on bail or no bail or just probation or this and that, well, it's going to keep happening. So what's happening with this law is they're enforcing a law, and from what I understand, they're doing geographic restrictions, right? So,
right.
But my problem with the geographic restrictions is, okay, so they're not in Waikiki, so what, you're sending them someplace else? Put them in jail. Simple. Done. Speaking of which,
well, now,
right?
simple and done are two words that don't apply.
Exactly. And that's the problem with this community, or these politicians. So on the way in, listening to your show, on the news said new jail is going to cost about $900 million, right? Because they've been dragging their feet, and the price keeps going up. Just build the damn thing and build it big. Don't scale it down. And then fill it up. Done.
So this is a conversation I've been engaged in for 30 years, and I know others for even longer. Steve?
Sure. Regarding Waikiki, Rick, I think we could all agree that every community and neighborhood should want to feel safe throughout the islands, but Waikiki is where all the tourists go. And it can be 11 o'clock at night, 12 o'clock at night, people are walking around. So I was really happy to see that the categories of theft and other things had decreased. And even if it's not a double-digit % decrease, I know some categories were double-digit. Even if it was single-digit, that makes an impact, because if you put a person's face as a victim of crime next to the percentage, then any type of decrease is actually effective. And we've talked about this on the show. Look, if the bad guys that want to do bad things in Waikiki understand that there's going to be consequences for their behavior, then they're going to do it less. And if they continue, and I'm glad that prosecutor Steve Alm is on it with his team. Waikiki is something that we can't let turn into a big mess. It's not going to work. The Japanese aren't going to come. People aren't going to want to be there. They're not going to want to. It's not going to be a family type thing. So I was happy to see that the numbers were going down. As far as the prison goes, or the jail goes, that's just part of a community. We have increased population. We need to give the courts the ability to, as Mark eloquently says most weeks, you need to enforce the laws and judges need to do their job. Well, we need to get, if the judges feel that incarceration is appropriate, then we need to make sure that we have a space for that. And we've talked about that. I know we're all drinking from the same water cooler here, but it is what it is. It doesn't mean lock them up and throw away the key, but there needs to be a place. And for those people that are incarcerated, maybe they won't have to get shipped over to the mainland. Maybe they can stay here, and maybe they can be closer to their families, because right now we're outsourcing a lot of that, right, Rick, to Arizona and some other places. So one of the benefits might be that if someone gets locked up and they got to do some time, they can do it here locally so their family can still stay in contact with them.
It is already 7:51. Unbelievable time flying by. More topicality ahead of us on this edition of the SHOPO Hour. Brother Mark, Brother Steve, and we'll be back. We have just a few minutes remaining, and again, clarification that although extolling the virtues of Waikiki, it is each district, all areas of the island where this type of attention, etc. Mark?
Yeah, so I totally understand where, Waikiki's a crown jewel. We have tourism coming in. We need to keep it safe. But you have these geographic restrictions, like I said, so you're going to shove these people other places. But what about the people that live here? What about the community that wants to feel safe? Right?
Yeah, but there's 25,000 residents in Waikiki, too.
Yeah, exactly.
And it is a magnet
Yeah.
for attracting. And I love the fact that steps were taken to increase with private patrolling and so all that. But I'm D1. And I wanted to share that I'm very appreciative as a D1 resident that the presence of our law enforcement is profound. Now, I don't know whether it's in response or patrol, etc., but visually, even today, driving in at 5:45 in the morning, HPD right on the road. I actually followed an officer because I didn't want to get in front because of the speed I was doing. But anyway, no, the presence is profoundly important. So I want to thank you.
No, my point with all this is just enforce the law all over the place. Right? If you're going to hammer people in Waikiki, hammer them in Kalihi, hammer them in Maui, hammer them in D1. You know what I'm saying? So, because the people in the communities need to feel safe also. Right?
Yeah, I get it. But, okay, I don't want to get on a tangent here. I'm trying to share that I'm in a different district than Waikiki, and I feel safer.
Yeah, okay.
I do. And the influx of people, whether it's tourists, residents, or crime, criminals, thieves, etc., there is a concentration. That's the open market.
Oh, yeah.
That's the open market. Go ahead.
No, Rick, I'm really happy that you feel that way because, we talked about Waikiki and D6, but D1 Urban Honolulu, it's got the Chinatown area.
Yeah.
So kind of Chinatown is its own thing. And I'm really happy to hear that because the command staff for District 1 and the officers, there's been a big emphasis on making Chinatown and that urban corridor feel safer with more police, more presence. When you have more police, people see it, maybe less likely to do things that are not what, the bad guys want to stay away. And then we have enough police to respond to situations that if the bad guys want to do something, we're going to be there. And I'm really happy to hear that.
No, and I mean that too.
That's great.
I went on a walking tour. I left my place and walked that 3 square block area, the prime time, up to River Street. Anyway, and I made note. I remember the days you'd have people peeing in the doorways and all of this, and now even Fort Street Mall, from the church down to Pioneer Square, Pioneer Plaza.
Yeah,
dude, it has not looked that solid in 30 years.
Well, that's directly related to, I feel, what is happening in District 1. You have Major Calvin Sun and Acting Captain Steve Lynn. Those are the two guys at the helm over there. And I know that they work pretty extensively with the businesses in Chinatown. You have the community policing officers. There's been a huge push, Rick, for, I would say, maybe almost 2 years now, to really make sure that residents like yourself have this feeling and that there's actually proactive policing being done down there. So thankfully residents like yourself can feel that way.
Feeling safer, but Mark's absolutely right. If I'm down on South King in Kalihi side, and if I'm down near Gulick Deli at 11 p.m., I'm still going to feel,
as you should,
etc.
Yeah, as you should.
So when we talk about communities being safer, are we talking about not a timeline, right? What time of the day? It's just an overall.
I'm just going the way they're enforcing the penalties and the punishment on the judicial side.
Yeah.
I know HPD's out there doing their thing and, with the resources they have. But if you're going to do a safe and sound in Waikiki, right? So what about the rest of the community? If people don't feel safe in their communities, I'm not saying D1, I'm saying any place.
Yeah.
Right. Just enforce it throughout the throughout the island. Just enforce it. Hammer these guys. It's going to go away. Simple, you know.
But there's nowhere. I appreciate that because I preach the same gospel.
Mm-hmm.
But as you just mentioned, in order to rectify, you have to have it in place. And now we're going to get back to the time-honored. It's the people in charge and the people that prosecute and the people that sentence. And
you're right,
dude. I'd love to see private patrols like in Waikiki that are going in Kapolei or going in other towns. I mentioned Melee earlier.
Yeah.
I'd love to see that. And final point of mine before I turn to you is I cringe every single time when I hear it's all about the money, because that is nothing but a big bucket of not goodness. It's not money. We pay and we receive. It's the triage and the applications. Yeah. Final thoughts, Brother Mark, as we end this program.
Final thoughts. Today's 9/11. Please do not forget. And also Friday is going to be Bill Sepulveda's service. Please show your respect. Show up. He gave his life for this community.
Amen. Amen. Thanks, brother.
Yeah, Rick, if just piggybacking off what Mark said, the services for Bill, Central Union Church, visitation starts at 9 a.m. Service is at 12 p.m. Again, Central Union Church, 1660 South Beretania Street.
Excellent. Gentlemen, thank you for today. I mean, on all counts, the start of the program was profound. And the follow-up, it means a lot to everyone because your membership touches everybody's lives because you're a constant in what we do and how we live. And many thanks extended. So I appreciate you both being here. Appreciate Brother Nick on duty and also Brother Bobby. But the SHOPO Hour returns next week at this time.